I'm going to start then with an introduction of Matt. Matt, delighted to have you with us. It's fantastic that you've been able to join us and give a certain grand element to this, because you're involved at a very high level in COP26. Matt is Director of Partnerships and Engagement in the COP26 unit, with responsibility for engagement and COP26 campaigns. Matt previously led a review of COP18 education at the Department for Education and ran the budget team at Her Majesty's Treasury. Matt's going to tell us a bit more about COP26. Over to you, Matt.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Graham. And just checking that everyone can hear me, or do write in the chat function if you can't, please. So, look, it's a real pleasure and honour to be asked to join in with this event today. I've caught up with a number of the speakers earlier, and there's been some absolutely fascinating, really excellent material. I've also been at home with my 3 kids who've been enjoying some of this. They're primary school aged, and very much enjoying thinking about Earth Day and what they can do as part of this amazing day. So many thanks. Just to sort of build on what you said. So yes, I'm a civil servant. I work in the Cabinet Office. I'm part of the team that's been pulled together to help organise the what's called COP26. I'll explain a little bit about what that is. And I've worked in a number of different departments before, but great to be here to talk about this today. So 3 things I wanted to cover. One of them is, so what is COP? What is behind this name? Secondly, why does it matter? And the third is how you can get involved, and that picks up on a lot of the things that you've been talking about so far today. I mean, the main message that I'd like to make is that it is a really exciting opportunity that the UK gets to host the world coming together to talk about climate change and what can be done at the conference in Glasgow. It's a great opportunity to do it, and a really strong chance for all of us to show across the world what we can all be doing to tackle this challenge. So what is it? What is COP? It stands for the Conference of Parties. It's the 26th meeting of this Conference of the Parties. It actually all goes back to the Earth Day in 1990, which inspired the Earth Summit in 1992, held in Rio de Janeiro. That was the summit that agreed the international treaty on climate change, which underpins all of the global climate change action since. There have been a series of important summits since then, including Kyoto in '97, and then most importantly in Paris, COP21 in 2015. And Paris was the point where 196 countries came together and they agreed that they would address climate change and limit any increases in global mean temperatures to 2 degrees and if possible to 1.5 degrees. So there's a huge number of countries involved. Hosting the COP in Glasgow is going to be the biggest summit that the UK has ever hosted. And it'll be based in Glasgow, but involves the Scottish Government, Northern Ireland, Wales, the whole of the UK. It's really a whole of UK event. It's working alongside Italy as partners. Chile held the last COP, although it had to be located in Madrid at the end of last year, and the COP after ours in COP26 will be held in Africa. So there's a huge opportunity here. This is the annual sort of gathering of all of the countries to look at whether the world is delivering on the commitments that it made in Paris. It's the first time since Paris when we can look at whether all of the commitments being made by individual countries add up to the 2 degrees or 1.5, if possible, the commitment that was made in Paris. So hugely important. It was due to be in November. It's because of the COVID pandemic. It is being postponed, but it will happen in 2021. It will be based in Glasgow, and it will be an enormously important moment for global climate change action. So secondly, why does it matter? Well, as you've heard from a lot of speakers as well, the science is really clear in terms of the impact of global emissions on temperatures. We do need to significantly cut back quickly on global emissions. We need to get to net zero, and we need to do that quickly. And then the UN, the COP process is governed by the UN. It's run by the UN, and the UN is the best possible way of bringing together all the countries that are involved in working on tackling climate. And climate change is a hold on, my computer has decided to freeze. Apologies for this. Hello. So climate is obviously not about just any one country. It's completely global. It's caused by all countries and their contributions, and it affects all countries, although it affects some countries a lot harder than others. And so tackling climate change has to be done on a truly global basis. That involves action from all countries. We, as part of the UK presidency organising this COP, will be working very closely with China, with India, with the EU, with the United States, Brazil, Japan, Australia, some of the major emitting countries. Roughly 60% of emissions come from the top 6 countries, so it's enormously important to work with those as well as with the rest of the world. The great news with it is that there are over 100 countries in the world who have already committed to a net zero target, including the UK, and so there is real momentum behind the commitment around transforming our economies and moving to net zero positions. It also involves transforming all parts of the economy. So energy is enormously important. It's not just about energy, but energy is enormously important. And in particular, coal, as the dirtiest mean of producing energy, is contributing roughly a third of energy production at the moment. And there are some 50 countries that are planning to build more coal-fired power stations. So it's enormously important that a process that the COP can be used to really drive the momentum and the transformation away from coal towards clean energy technologies. And it is fantastic that there are some countries like Sweden and Austria last week who have committed to moving fully off coal. And the UK, France and other countries will be doing it in the next 3 to 4 years. And this is something that we can all have an effect on. We can all affect the amount of energy that is needed by the world in the way that we consume energy ourselves. And if we can reduce the amount of energy that we consume, turning off light bulbs as a small element of that, that is a contribution to what we're trying to achieve. The second area we really need to make progress on is nature. This is such an important part of climate. We've heard lots about it already. The connection between climate and biodiversity is so enormously strong. But the contribution of land use, of forests and farming is the second largest contributor to climate change. And the agricultural expansion, so the deforestation of our rainforests for the production of commodities like soy and beef and palm oil and coffee, it creates about 80%, it's responsible for about 80% of the deforestation we see. So we can all have an impact on that as consumers, as people who buy things and buy products, and making sure what we buy is sustainable. And we will be working with some of the countries that consume most of these products to move to much more sustainable supply chains. Cars. One thing that we are starting to really visibly see is the move from cars that are working with internal combustion engine and contributing some 10% or so of global emissions to zero emission vehicles. It's starting to happen. It's still only a very, very small fraction, about 2% of car sales. And it needs to increase incredibly quickly over the next 10, 20 years. But the 10 biggest economies account for about 3/4 of car sales. So if we can work with those 10 biggest countries and move quickly to phasing out the internal combustion engine, we can have a huge impact on the global car market and on emissions. So we will be really working with a range of different countries and different businesses and different consumer organisations to help drive forward the momentum on the shift away from the internal combustion engine. A fourth area that we'll really focus on is money, is finance. So the flow of money across the world has a huge impact on which businesses succeed, which can get money for investment, and so the priorities that businesses put around environment and climate, and finance has a huge capacity to be able to really shift business behaviour and to support some of the changes we want to see. And so there's a huge potential here, but we'll be working with a range of different financial institutions. The final thing just to say is the importance of supporting those vulnerable countries and communities that are already being impacted by climate change. And we'll be putting a very strong focus on the financial support for them and how to support building climate resilient infrastructure. So how can you all get involved? I think all the things that you've been talking about today really resonate. It is absolutely true that the voice of young people has had a huge impact, particularly since the school strikes, on the commitments of national governments to climate action. And that, combined with the individual actions you can take, is enormously powerful. So please do get involved. Get involved in talking to your MPs, to your politicians, as Becky was saying earlier. This is a hugely exciting opportunity to be hosting this conference, but we want to make the most of it and drive as much progress and momentum as we can over the next year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Matt. Good to have a bit more understanding of how things are developing with regards to COP26. I've got some questions for you, Matt, that have come in. So are you able to answer a couple of our questions?
Sure, no problem.
Just bear with me when I get my just a mention to Claire, who's looking after technical. I'm just getting some echo on my audio. So Matt, one of the questions that's come in, this is from Finn in Wiganby School. So it's, Finn from Wiganby School says, is COVID-19 putting climate change on hold? I think quite a provocative question from one of our students.
Finn, that's a very good question to be asking. And the obvious answer is that the climate doesn't wait for anything. The climate is being affected by man-made emissions, and COVID, while it is having some immediate impacts on emissions that we're seeing in the very short term, that is for very unsustainable reasons, and we are still contributing greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. So we are still having an impact on climate, and we cannot wait for taking action. That said, clearly it's not possible to bring together all countries of the world into one place while most countries are instituting some form of lockdown. And so that's the reason why the COP26 conference is being postponed to a point where we are able to bring people back together. But none of that releases the pressure for taking action on climate. And that will be particularly important as countries across the world are investing significantly in their economies at looking to the recovery from the impacts of the COVID pandemic.
Okay, thank you so much, Matt. So the next question, this is from, I love the fact that we've the geographical information coming in on the questions, showing that people are all over the UK sending in their questions. So we've got a question from Beth Hill from Dunblane Primary, who wants to know why Boris Johnson doesn't tell us what we need to do to save the planet. He told us all to lock down. We listened.
Well, it's a great question about, you know, what should we all be doing, and can we have a strong, you know, message from our politicians about what we can all do to, you know, to make a difference. The thing that the government has done in the last year, which I think has been picked up before, has been to legislate on a commitment to transform the UK economy and to move to a net zero economy. And that is a massive change. And that, as people have said before, involves change right the way across all ways of our life and the way of the economy working. And that will involve a series of different changes that are needed across parts of the economy. And the government will be providing a lot more information about what that means. So I think, you know, watch this space for a lot more to come over the next year on this.
Thanks, Matt. And one more question for you. This is from Jess Tipton, who says, what do you think to the idea of a virtual schools COP26 in the autumn term, in spite of the real thing being postponed?
So, I mean, I think it's a great idea to use as many different forums as you can to bring together schools. I mean, this is a fantastic event, this. And I would try and do as many things, you know, like this, that can bring together young people in different forums to talk about climate. I really like some of the earlier comments about, you know, this is so important to talk about what you're doing and talk about what you're concerned about. And I think, you know, a forum like this, or kind of any other forum that can bring together young people and school children to talk about climate over the course of the, you know, the coming months, and particularly while we're in lockdown, is really important. And any ideas, you know, we'd absolutely kind of happily receive them, but also, you know, encourage all schools to, you know, to keep proceeding with these type of events, and we'd happily come and support them where we can. But yeah, I mean, use all the means that we can to bring people together and talk about what can be done.
Thank you very much. That's great. Thanks for answering those questions, Matt.